Welcome to eMarketer One-on-One, a video interview series where industry leaders share their tips for staying competitive in the world of marketing and advertising. I'm Geoff Ramsey, co-founder of eMarketer and chief evangelist at Insider Intelligence. I'm here with the CEO of InMobi, Abhay Singhal, and we're going to talk about what's happening in the digital advertising space, including the power of in-app advertising for brands. Abhay, tell us a little bit about your role, how it has evolved, and what exactly is it that InMobi does?
Absolutely. So I've been co-founder of InMobi for the last 12 years. We started, the best way to tell the story is InMobi started the same year as the launch of iPhone, which we all know has changed the mobile industry completely. Over the last 13 years, InMobi has been working with the advertisers and publishers around the world to make their advertising objectives possible. So InMobi overall comprises of three group companies. InMobi Marketing Cloud, whose core objective is to make advertisers find and engage with their users. Glance, which is the world's biggest live platform, which is very Asia-centric for now. And TrueFactor, which is our own play at providing intelligence as a service. These three companies are part of InMobi Group, and I lead the InMobi Marketing Cloud as its CEO.
So what growth trends are you seeing in the world of in-app advertising?
In-app advertising has been on a tearing growth. Just to look back 13 years ago, there wasn't anything called as apps. We used to still go to websites and do many, many things. And then came the App Store that absolutely made these little icons on your screen become your window to the internet world. And the world hasn't looked back since then. Today, average consumer has almost about 70 to 80 apps on their devices. And on any particular day, they are using close to about 15, 16 of them very, very actively. User share of time on their mobile screen is growing rapidly. It has gone up by 24 minutes just during this pandemic. And roughly 90% of that time is actually being consumed within the apps itself. So as you can see, there's a huge, huge share of time that is being spent by consumers within the in-app ecosystem. Interestingly, what that tells the consumers and what that tells the marketers is this is an ecosystem that we need to understand in its entirety and make ourselves aware, because that's where the consumers are and that's where the eyeballs are as far as the consumer engagement is concerned.
Which of these trends do you see continuing beyond the pandemic?
As big a humanitarian crisis it is, in my view, it has significantly accelerated the change that the industry was always on. Whether you look at the QSR industry or movie industry or e-commerce industry, all of those industries have changed beyond any recognition. Trolls World Tour, it almost did as much viewership in 3 weeks as it did in 5 months when the first franchisee came out. Pretty much every new movie that is now releasing on the streaming platform and is available at one point in time for all consumers to see. The number of people that are now ordering the grocery, or for example, I'll tell you a personal example. For me, shopping into a store, a big decision point is whether that store is going to do a curbside delivery or not. If that store is going to do a curbside delivery, they have my first preference and vote for me to go and buy into that store. So you walk into Walmarts or Targets and the aisles are empty. During this back to school trend that we've seen, the aisles are actually empty. You're not going to find the stuff lying in the aisles, but yet the consumers are buying. So I believe that some of these changes are absolutely here to stay.
We've all seen that connected TV viewing has grown in popularity during the pandemic. eMarketer estimates as well that US CTV viewers will increase 6% to 206 million this year. In our earlier forecast in February, before the pandemic, we had only predicted 3.5% growth in viewership. So do you think these connected TV viewership habits will continue once the pandemic recedes? And where do you see InMobi potentially playing a role in this space?
The subscription numbers, in my view, are here to stay. The viewership may actually go down a bit as students start to go back to school, as college starts to become more real, as we get back to the offices the way offices used to be, I think the viewership may go down a bit, but I think the subscription numbers are here to stay. InMobi has been looking at that trend for a long period of time. In fact, InMobi's core focus has always been on video, and within video, it's always been on premium video. Albeit we've not played in a long form video content. We played a lot in the short form video content. So as you go one level higher on the OTT CTV space, you start to look at things like whether it's a linear programming or whether it's asynchronous programming, or you start to look at whether it's long form or full episode player or small form video, and things of that nature. So we are a very active participant in the short form video premium content space. I believe, and I actually predict that at some point in time in the future, there's going to be a big there's going to be a fork in the road where one of these large OTT services start to test out massively with ad-funded models. I know that Hulu is trying that, sort of marginally successful. You can say it one way or the other. Netflix has been sort of religiously against it. We tried some model, but probably we don't know where they are headed right now. But it's an interesting space. No industry can, in my view, only survive beyond a certain numbers on subscription-based model.
I can absolutely corroborate with that. What we're seeing is that AVOD is really starting to take hold. SVOD is what started the ball rolling with Netflix and Amazon Prime, where people are paying for the content. But there's lots of room, particularly with the unemployment figures as high as they are, and the fact that you can't subscribe or watch everything and pay for it all. So you're going to have more advertising sponsored opportunities. And Roku, as an example, which is an AVOD player, is the fastest growing device out there. So it's just, another example.
But the interesting part is that because it's a premium content, because it's a TV-like quality, because it's all of those things, I think advertising needs to be restitched and rewired for that medium. It is the kind of things that we've all learned to be table stakes in digital advertising are probably need to be relearned all over again for making the advertising work in this space.
So we have some work to do in that space.
Absolutely.
Well, let's switch gears for a second, and I'm going to ask you an interesting question that's been on my mind, which is, what is your reaction to Apple's announcement about killing the identifier for advertisers, or what's called the IDFA, back in late June? And how will your business cope with this change?
It's been an interesting last few weeks, to say the least. Just as industry was coming out of the pandemic and we were starting to see the numbers go up, there comes the Apple's announcement. The industry has been sort of anticipating that, because Apple has been leading this wave first with Safari and then with this IDFA. We all had hoped for that Apple is going to be far more collaborative and far more open and prepared, truly, to say in the way they're going to approach solving this problem, because fundamentally it affects their developer ecosystem the most. 30% of the users that have their limit ad tracking on are potentially earning, or the publishers are potentially earning 30 to 50% lower on those users. So it is bound to have an impact for sure from an economic perspective.
Well, in a related issue, the identity, of course, has been a big thing even before Apple iOS 14. Earlier this year, as we all know, Google announced that they would be ending third-party cookie support on their Chrome browser, I think by 2022. So what do you see as the future for identification and identity management in ad tech? I mean, this is what everybody's talking about right now. It's kind of like we're in the crosshairs.
Oh, absolutely. The entire industry is getting actually re-architected. The challenge is that the entire digital advertising ecosystem was built on precision, was built on attribution, was built on being able to deliver the clear ROI to everything. I don't think the industry is ready to go back to those days where I know 50% of my dollars are waste. I just didn't know which 50%. So I don't think industry is ready to go back to that era again. Identity is a pretty hot topic, as you know it. Everyone, independent players like LiveRamp and Trade Desk and industry bodies like IAB, and we are a big contributor to IAB, but everyone has a role to play. What I really admire about Google, as much as a walled garden that they are, I think they have taken an extremely collaborative approach to coming out with the solutions of discontinuing the cookies in the Chrome ecosystem. In fact, Google is a contributor to the IAB's ReArc project, where everybody is sort of contributing and coming out with how we can achieve the privacy, the user privacy, security, and the advertising effectiveness. And guess what? There is a way. We just need to find it. Not because we don't know it doesn't mean that the part does not exist. So certainly we believe that if for the next year or two, there's going to be flux in the industry. There are going to be many identity solutions. As independent exchange, we'll be integrating with everyone, and we'll be giving options to the advertisers to choose one or the other. But as both you, Geoff, and I have seen in this industry, nothing remains fragmented for long. First comes the fragmentation, and then comes someone who very elegantly solves this problem and tries to bring these things together in the manner. I just hope that industry body like an IAB is able to put their might in the front and really bring in consistency of the solution across all the partners.
So Abhay, do you see the identity question and the issue of consumer trust linked as key issues?
Oh, absolutely. You cannot look at them as two isolated problems. We take user identity extremely seriously from a privacy perspective, from a data protection perspective. Yet, we also respect that the consumers have a right to access the content for free. They need better quality content, whether it is the video that they are watching or be it the ads. They have the right to be served a good quality content.
In your view, is the industry doing enough to support privacy?
I think the intent is there, Geoff, but what I probably see as an issue is the pace of it, which I think is true for any sort of an effort where you need to bring many different stakeholders together on the same page and try to come up with some standard that works. And at the same point in time, I think the industry bodies are also very aware. They've seen some examples of regulations just leading to the walls being raised higher. So that's what industry is also worried about, that we don't want a scenario where you come up with some sort of a standard and it just gives a legitimate reason for the walled gardens to raise their walls even higher. And then what are we left with?
That's a good segue to the next question. I'm sure most our listeners out there have heard of the quote unquote Facebook boycott. And the brands that were active in this, I think it was about 1,000 brands altogether, as well, of course, as the similar boycotts of other social media properties. So what are your observations here? Where do you see this going? Is this going to be a real problem for Facebook and the other social media properties? Or is this just going to be kind of a flash in the pan?
I think it's a flash in the pan. As big as they may be, they are corporations at the end of the day. And corporations have an objective of maximizing the shareholders' value. So unless and until there is something that really brings the financial punitive action, they're not going to, I don't think they're going to be, they're going to take this as seriously as probably this thing deserves. Advertisers are back to Facebook. They're spending as much money, if not more, than what they were doing before, because at the end of the day, an advertiser needs to run their business. And these walled gardens are extremely effective in providing the outcome that the advertisers are looking for.
Right. And let's not forget that, while many of the large marketers or brands bowed out, they represent a very small portion, somewhere between 6 and 16% of the revenue that Facebook gets, depending on what source you look at. And then you look at the other 90% or so of the small businesses. There's some 8 million businesses that advertise on Facebook. And while some of the small businesses will go out of existence, what I've been hearing is many of those that are still in existence will be doubling or tripling down because they want to go for the advanced targeting, the closed loop measurement systems, and the broad reach that Facebook and some of the others offer.
We saw this in our own data, Geoff. So look, Facebook is pretty large, but even at our scale, while we had April to be a lukewarm month for various reasons. The recovery that we've had in May, June, July, and August is just massive, which basically says that there is enough liquidity in the market space. There is enough demand that the marketers are chasing. And we almost live in the tale of two worlds, right? I mean, I don't know, when I wake up in the morning, we have our data to look at what, things are all going up, usage, ad dollars, ECPMs, everything is going up. And on the other hand, you look at unemployment data, and that also seems to be going up. So it just feels like that there is this dichotomy that is out there at play, which is an interesting observation. I've never seen these two things operate so much disconnected with each other in any of the previous effects that we've had. But then we've never had a pandemic of the kind that we are in. So no example to look back to.
So we're all aware that a presidential election is coming up. How will this affect ad spending and marketing tactics in the coming months?
In our kind of the world, advertising has already started. It is no longer restricted to the 10 days, 20 days, 30 days before the election, where there used to be these huge blitzkrieg go on to the TV world just leading up to the final D-Day. It's a very interesting space where the advertising is all about getting your supporters to vote for you. I actually think that the election will be won or lost on a very small margin just on that basis. So, and the advertising strategies that we are seeing from advertisers exactly reflect that.
We've seen announcements on how retailers are shifting away from the traditional holiday shopping experience. eMarketer is estimating that U.S. e-commerce spending will grow a whopping 18%. Yes, 18% in a pandemic, after a nearly 15% gain in 2019. So once the pandemic fades, do you see e-commerce continuing along this trend?
For me, there were two watershed movements during this pandemic. One watershed movement was where Pepsi launched their own direct-to-consumer website, where you can actually now order a goodie bag, and they have like 2 or 3 packages directly from Pepsi, and they'll deliver it to your home. And the second watershed movement was where Walmart first and then Target, both of those companies announced that they're going to shut down their stores during the Thanksgiving holiday this time. Look at these two events and you know exactly where they're headed. If you have a store of the kind of Walmart and Target willing to shut down their store at the biggest shopping period of the US, it basically, they're using that as a milestone to backwardly integrate everything to be absolutely prepared to be a digital shopping first company. So you have Walmart there, you have Target there, you have Home Depot, come to QSR, same trends in those verticals. So I actually think, Geoff, this train has left the station.
We sometimes forget that, Amazon, with according to eMarketer, has 38%, almost 40% of the entire e-commerce market. But through companies like Shopify, it democratizes so many of the smaller businesses to be able to compete.
Absolutely, and those are the trends. I mean, these are the infrastructures that we didn't have during the last recession. These are the infrastructures that we didn't have during the last turn. So I actually am absolutely confident that all of these industries are going to become digital first. And guess what? As they become digital first, what comes immediately after that? Advertising. Amazon has proven that advertising is an extremely lucrative bottom line creator business for retailers, and hence it will be for every other retailer who becomes digital first over the next few years.
What does the future look like for in-app advertising?
So there are three trends that we are backing on. More consumers are using app, they're using more apps, and they're giving more time to those apps. All these three trends, if you sort of multiply with each other, indicate only one thing, that as a consumer, your share of time on apps is only going to increase. And we did a massive research in 2019 where we predicted that as a brand, if you have your own app on the device, a consumer is 20% more likely to purchase from you than from somebody else. So the apps have actually become a symbol for the brand recall. Imagine that you have to go to the website, type to the Google, versus you have to just tap an app and order something from any one of these existing players. So in fact, that's another trend that we've observed during the pandemic. We've seen this huge acceleration of the players trying to get their apps on the devices of the consumer and trying to train them to use them to buy products. So I actually think that the future of in-app is just extremely bright, and InMobi is on that path.
I think that's all that we have time for, Abhay. It has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation, and I hope we can have another one again soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.